I'm so sorry, ma'am. I know you need this medicine, but it looks like it's not covered by your insurance.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to deny that one.
Wait, who are you?
I'm your insurance company's pharmacy benefit manager. I get paid based on the price of a medicine, and I don't make as much money off this one.
No one should stand between you and your medicine. Visit phrma.org/middleman to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
I called up Jeff Goodell because I wanted a kind of weather report. Jeff lives in Austin, Texas. And when I reached him, he told me it was relatively cool outside.
And by that, I mean 90s.
90s is cool?
Yeah. When you see a number with only 2 digits instead of 3, it feels like the depths of winter.
Jeff has spent the last few weeks sweltering under the Texas heat dome. It's so hot that when he goes to his car, he says, he's got to brace himself before touching the steering wheel.
We have a public swimming pool, a really great place called Barton Springs in the center of the city that stays open until 10 o'clock at night. And you go there at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and it's jam-packed with people. And, you know, the water is perfect and cool. And it feels like when you jump in, your body kind of sizzles because it's so hot, and then you're cooling off so fast. So it changes everything about the rhythms of your life.
Yeah. Do you feel like until this year, maybe even this year too, suffering through the heat has been kind of a badge of honor in Texas?
Yeah, I think, you hear that a lot here. Texas is always hot. Texas is tough. But one of the interesting things that's happening is that even people who kind of are, feel that way. My wife, I didn't grow up in Texas, but my wife did. And she's talking about how, yeah, Texas is always hot, but this is different. And the sort of heat macho, the sort of like heat cowboy thing, I think is being really challenged here because people are scared.
People have a reason to be scared. Last month, a postal worker in Dallas collapsed and died in the heat. Multiple hikers have been killed too, including a father and his stepson. And all this is extra eerie for Jeff. He just wrote a whole book begging all of us to take heat more seriously. It's called The Heat Will Kill You First.
So I sort of have this sort of Stephen King-like feeling of living in the pages of my own book.
The reason I'm talking to you now is that it's not just Texas experiencing extreme heat. Like some scientists have been saying July 4th of this year was the hottest day ever recorded in Earth's history. And not just that, but July 3rd was the hottest day in Earth's history. And then July 4th topped that, which just feels relentless. Have we seen anything like this before?
Not in human history, not in the time that humans have been around to measure temperature. I mean, obviously, the Earth has been through a lot of extremes, but this is like basically the Earth freaking out at a rate faster than we anticipated, given the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. So when we think about adding more, you start to think about, well, how far can these extremes go? It was 115, 116 degrees here in Austin, for example, last week. Can it get to be 120, 125, 130? What does that mean? And how do we survive that?
If we've never been here before, temperature-wise, do we have any idea where this is going?
No. I mean, to be blunt, no, we don't know.
Today on the show, this summer is proof that we are living in an overheated world. So, what are we going to do about it? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you're driving, cooking, or doing laundry, Progressive knows the podcasts you listen to go best when they're bundled with another activity, much like how their Progressive home and auto policies go best when they're bundled. Having these two policies together makes taking care of your insurance easier and could help you save too. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save nearly $800 on average. That's a whole lot of savings and protection for your favorite podcast listening activities, like going on a road trip, cooking dinner, and even hitting the gym. Yep, your home and your car are even easier to protect when you bundle your insurance together. Find your perfect combo. Get a home and car insurance quote at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $793 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary.
I'm so sorry, ma'am. I know you need this medicine, but it looks like it's not covered by your insurance.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to deny that one.
Wait, who are you?
I'm your insurance company's pharmacy benefit manager. I get paid based on the price of a medicine, and I don't make as much money off this one.
No one should stand between you and your medicine. Visit phrma.org/middleman to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
Before we get too far, I want to ask you about the title of your book that's coming out. It's called The Heat Will Kill You First. Why that title? Where'd it come from?
What I wanted to really communicate is the immediacy of heat and the immediate dangers and risks of heat. You know, we talk a lot about climate change and we talk a lot about the different impacts. My previous book was about sea level rise, and that's a really significant thing that is changing the boundaries of the land and the sea and having massive implications for coastal cities around the world. But, you know, no one's going to stand on the beach and die because, you know, a glacier is melting in Antarctica. It's not going to happen in real time. Heat will. I mean, you can go for a walk on a hot day, and if you're not careful and you don't know what you're doing, and if you get stuck in a really hot place, or you have any kind of medical conditions, or you run out of water, all kinds of things can go wrong. You can die, and people do die all the time.
Yeah. Your book begins with this very affecting story of a whole family who died from heat exposure. I'm wondering if you could just tell their story and what happened to them.
Sure. It was a very tragic story that, you know, a family living who had just bought a house outside of Yosemite National Park in California. He was a software engineer in Silicon Valley, and they were exploring the area. They decided on one Sunday to go for a hike not far from where they lived. So they left early in the morning. The father put the one-year-old child in a carrier on his back, and they had a dog, their particular dog, with them, and they went for a hike and hiked a couple of miles down to a river, hung out there for a little bit, and then began their climb back. It was about a 2-mile hike back, but they didn't consider heat. It was hot. It was like 100 degrees, hot, but, you know, not like the kind of number that would just scare the bejesus out of you immediately. And unfortunately, though, they had to climb up this very steep mountainside that was directly exposed to the sun. And they very quickly got into trouble. It's not exactly clear the sequence of things, but basically they found the entire family dead on the trail the next day.
Including the dog.
Including the dog, right.
And the baby.
And the baby, yes. And it was an incredible tragedy and very sad story, but emblematic to me of how the risks of heat and heat exposure are completely misunderstood.
You've written really eloquently about what could have happened inside these people's bodies as they fought off the heat. Can you explain that a little bit? Like, what happens exactly? What is it about the heat that can be so overpowering physically?
I think we all intuitively know that our body temperature is really important. You know, we talk a lot about hot days and everything, but what really matters is our body's temperature. And so we have a very narrow range that internal body temperature can tolerate. And what happens on a hot day, especially if you are doing something like hiking or doing any kind of physical work is that, your body begins to overheat. And when your body begins to overheat, we only have one mechanism to cool off, which is sweating. And so in order to cool off, your heart starts pumping faster, pumps more blood out to your skin, the surface of your skin, where you sweat, and the evaporation from the sweat cools off that blood and circulates through your body. But if the heat is accumulating faster than it can be dissipated that way, there's no other mechanism in our body to get rid of the heat. So your heart starts pumping faster and faster and faster. Your body pulls the blood away from the inner organs, desperately trying to get it out to your skin to cool off. You begin to get dizzy. You begin to hallucinate.
You've said that actually, like inside your body, some systems begin to melt.
Yeah, I mean, at a internal body temperature of about 104, 105, something like that, your cell membranes actually begin to what's called denature, sort of like what an egg does when you put it in a frying pan. The proteins break down. Your cells begin to actually melt. The proteins, which are the sort of fundamental structures, begin to unravel. Things happen like the lining of your intestines begins to come apart. Your blood starts clotting. It's really a kind of cascading chaos in your body that is very difficult to stop. Even if you go to a hospital, if you've gone too far into a heat stroke, it's very, very difficult to repair the damage.
It's also weirdly silent. Like, one thing, learning about this family's death in California, it took a long time to figure out what happened with them, months. And even then, it was just process of elimination. To me, it highlighted how there may be lots of people dying from heat, and it's possible we don't know.
Oh, it's not only possible, it's very certain that we don't know. Heat death statistics, everybody acknowledges, are wildly underestimated. Heat's not like a gunshot or a gun, right? It doesn't leave a wound on your body. And so, when people die of heat, they actually die of something else, like a heart attack or something like that. And in this case with this family, no one could believe that, two adults, a baby, and a dog could all just be kind of dead from heat. And so they looked for other things. They looked for water poisoning. They looked at some kind of group suicide thing. They looked at carbon monoxide release from a nearby, if there were any mines nearby. And it became clear there wasn't any of those things. And, heat was the kind of obvious killer, but the invisible killer, the one that left no footprints, no tracks. And that's sadly what heat does, and sadly why it's so kind of widely misunderstood and underestimated.
This family story also highlights something else, which is something you focus on in your book. The fact that deaths from heat are getting what you say is more democratic, meaning it's not just older people, outdoor workers, other vulnerable groups that are being impacted. It's everyone. It's hitting all kinds of people. These are just people out for a pleasure walk, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, heat is democratic in the sense that, as I mentioned before, all living things have this sort of thermal range that they can deal with. And it doesn't matter if you have, $100 million in the bank, or if you have no money. It doesn't matter if you're, living, at the equator or the North Pole. If you get too hot, you will die. And so heat is a very democratic in that sense. But it's also democratic in the sense that, like you said, it's not just outdoor workers and things now. If it's 115 degrees and very humid, you don't have to spend a lot of time outdoors or stuck in that kind of environment to die. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, it's no big deal. We have air conditioning. We'll be fine." I'm sorry for those people who are stuck outside, but I'm fine. Well, you're not fine, because what happens if the power goes out? Here in Texas, we had a 5-day power outage a couple of winters ago. I was here for that. If the same kind of thing happened during a heat wave in a major city, which it could very well happen because the grid is always strained as people crank up their ACs, thousands of people will die. It will be what one infrastructure expert in my book described as a heat Katrina, referring to Hurricane Katrina that hit New Orleans a few years ago.
And even if the heat doesn't kill you, it's not good for you, right? Like, I wonder if we can talk about the trickle-down impact of heat on human health.
There's lots of aspects of that. I mean, and it's not just the sort of direct aspects of it in the sense that, there's more and more evidence showing that heat has psychological impacts. Suicide rates go up, rates of violence go up. But it's also the way heat impacts a lot of things sort of around us. It impacts the food that we can grow and where we can grow the food. So that has enormous, not only public health implications, but economic implications. If it gets too hot to grow corn in Iowa, which is not hard to imagine, that's going to change things in Iowa in a very big way. It changes disease patterns. I spent a lot of time with public health officials and others who trap and track mosquitoes. And, it was announced that we're seeing a resurgence of malaria in the United States for the first time in many decades.
So interesting. You're talking about like the hidden hand of heat, which I hadn't really considered, but then I guess I should, because you look at what happened a little bit earlier in the summer with the wildfire smoke. Like, there are going to be more wildfires because it's hotter, and the smoke is then going to drift around. And that's also part of this, right?
Right. And, one of the things that's widely misunderstood about heat that connects to what you're saying is that, we're talking about heat here, and it's like we're talking about it, in the context of climate change, and it's thought of as just like, okay, there's just another kind of aspect of climate change, right? It's like there's droughts, there's, sea level rise, and there's heat. But that's not true. Heat is the primary driver of all of these things. The reason there are bigger, hotter wildfires, the reason the East Coast was covered with, orange skies for a week and people inhaling these wildfire smoke on all the particulate matter that goes along with that is because it's been hotter in Alberta. The soil is drier. The trees are drier. They're more like kindling wood. When they do start from a lightning or for whatever reason, they burn bigger and faster and hotter. It's
funny because I'm thinking about Bill Clinton, when he was running for president, he used to say it's the economy, stupid. Mm-hmm. that was the tagline. It's like, it sounds like what you're saying is it's the heat, stupid. Like, the heat is the basis of a lot.
Yeah, can I steal that?
You got it.
That's true. No, that's but that is exactly right. That is exactly what it is. It's the heat, stupid. That is the primary driver of all these other things that we're talking about.
Is there any chance, given the research you've done, that you think humans might somehow adapt to heat as a new normal?
Well, sure. I mean, part of the thing implicit in your question, when you say humans, that's who, right? So certainly, humans are incredibly good at adapting to things. We adapt to all kinds of horrible and wonderful things. So I have no question that, we will adapt to this in some ways, but there will also be a lot of loss, a lot of suffering, a lot of death. I'm sitting here in my office in Austin, and 4 blocks away from me are 200 people living under an overpass who are homeless, who are suffering greatly. And I promise you, they are not going to have as good an easy time adapting to the next extreme heat wave as I am going to have.
When we come back, how places inside the heat dome are trying to cool off. I wonder if we can talk about what some regions are doing to mitigate the impact of extreme heat. And I wonder if we should just start in Texas, because it's where you are, and it's a place that's been seeing some of the most extreme heat over the last few weeks. What's happening in Texas that might show how regions will adapt?
Well, I mean, Texas is not necessarily a paradigm of heat adaptation.
Yeah, the way you answered that question, you were like, could we start somewhere else?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, there are things that I can talk about here. And to be honest, there's, no place that is, no city that I'm aware of is like a model example. But, here in Texas, there's a big tree planting effort, as there is in many cities. There's the creation of these more and more public spaces that are available to everybody. For example, the Blanton Museum of Art, which is a really great museum here in Austin, just erected these really beautiful 40-foot high kind of shade structures in what had formerly been a really hot, ugly kind of concrete courtyard in front of the museum, creating this wonderful shaded public space that's really great. On hot days, the city has done things like made buses free for anybody so that, people who are homeless or otherwise can't afford air conditioning can just jump on a bus, which is, of course, air conditioned, and ride the bus as long as they want just to cool down. They're building better bus stops. Better bus stops are, like convection ovens in many cities. So there's more thought going into that.
Experts also say that the ready supply of renewable energy in Texas, stuff like solar and wind, has been key in adapting to increasing temperatures. During the heat dome, a lot of coal and gas plants simply stopped functioning. But energy experts say the power grid managed to stay afloat largely because of all of the solar power available.
Texas is, the oil capital, fossil fuel capital of America for sure. But, there's been an amazing progress in the development and deployment of wind and solar in Texas. It's a leader in the country in both.
It's like making the heat work for you.
Exactly. And, it works better on these sort of hot, sunny days, right? It really has been a model case in why renewables are great, because not only are they, reducing CO2 emissions and all that kind of thing, but they're also work better in these sort of hot, extreme conditions. And so that's kind of been proven out in the last few weeks here.
Some places have appointed chief heat officers. What do those people do?
It's a really great idea, actually. I mean, they're not Gestapo, right? They're not like they don't have
arresting the sun.
Yeah, right. But one of the problems with heat is understanding heat is about just basically people don't understand it, are stupid about what to do, as I was. And there's just no thought in the kind of city bureaucracies and in the city public health and messaging and everything. So these heat officers are symbolic positions, but they're important positions that are a person in these cities whose job it is to get everybody to think differently about heat. And so they meet with community groups, they meet with mayors, they meet with the city council, they meet with urban planners, they meet with universities, and they say basically to them, hey, you need to think about heat. And I think they're really valuable as a start, as a beginning in this long journey towards understanding this new world.
I think you're saying we're nowhere near prepared yet.
I'm saying that very clearly. Yes.
Yeah. You've already mentioned the idea of a heat Katrina, the idea that it gets very hot, everyone flips on their ACs, power grid fails, and then everyone's just cooking in their houses and how damaging that would be.
Yeah.
When the people you talk to think about how things might go wrong when it comes to heat, I'm wondering what scenarios keep them up at night.
Well, I think two things. One is, how extreme are these heat extremes going to get? Could there be a 125 degree heat wave like right now in Texas? And that kind of thing is very frightening because, when you get into those temperature ranges, that's really deadly for a lot of people. So one of the scary things right now is just the uncertainty, even among the best climate scientists, of how quickly our atmosphere and our climate is reacting just to the levels of warming we have now. The other thing is the sort of blackout scenario, is a power failure because, as I mentioned earlier, air conditioning is all fine and dandy until it doesn't work. And one of the dangerous aspects of this is the way houses and buildings are built now. There are these sealed structures that are designed for efficiency, right? In order to make air conditioning as efficient as possible, you want it to be, well insulated, double pane windows, everything sealed, no leaks, no drafts, all that kind of thing. Well, that works fine, except if you turn off the air conditioning, these buildings quickly become death traps because you can't open a window. You can't get ventilation. The building becomes, just a convection oven very, very quickly. So that makes them kind of doubly dangerous.
Summer is usually seen as this time when people relax. They go on vacation. They spend time outside. I feel like extreme heat is about to ruin all that. Do you think about how heat is going to just really shift our whole conception of this season and how we live it? Is it already doing that?
Oh, it totally is. I mean, I moved to Texas 4 years ago, and I grew up in the Bay Area, California. Summer was always, this idyllic time, going to the beach in Santa Cruz. I used to surf, hiking in the Sierras. I loved summer always. In Texas here already, summer is a brutal time. But what's happened this summer, it has become, you're imprisoned. You're jailed into your air conditioning, and you don't dare go out. And I think it's going to change fundamentally how we think about summertime and how we think about this, wonderful, free, warm, beach-going time. I mean, I listen to, Beach Boys songs now, and it's a whole other vibe than the one that they're singing about.
How do you write a book like yours and avoid being a total pessimist?
I get that question a lot. People are like, how can you write? I've been writing about climate change for 20 years. And it's like, why are you not just like an alcoholic stuck in your basement? Just like, it's, for me, it's a chronicling of loss and suffering for sure in writing a book like this. But it's also chronicling incredible people, inspiring, learning new things, thinking differently about their world, I think there's this idea that, if our world has to change too much, that's a bad thing. But also, I drive around Texas here and I see these long strip malls and all this ugly architecture and these suburban things. And it's just like, it's not like our world is perfect, right? We can do better. We can build it in a better way. We can learn, we can be smarter, we can build more pleasant, more hospitable cities. We can learn how to be safer in these environments. We can help protect more people. I mean, I think there's a lot of incredibly inspiring work going on, and it really is exciting. I wake up every day thinking, what new am I going to learn today?
Jeff, I'm so grateful for your research and your book and kind of just your energy on this topic. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Jeff Goodell is the author of the book, The Heat Will Kill You First: Life and Death on a Scorched Planet. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osborne, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. We are getting a ton of support these days from Laura Spencer. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little help from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go say hi on Twitter. I'm at Mary's Desk. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here tomorrow.
Where's the most convenient place to get that big fitness energy? It's Planet Fitness. Now through July 19th, you can join for just $1 down, $10 a month. With over 2,400 convenient locations worldwide and equipment for every workout, you can get in, get energized, and get going. Whether you're a newbie or a gym pro, you belong in the judgment-free zone. So join today for $1 down, $10 a month, no commitment, cancel anytime. Deal ends Wednesday, July 19th. See Home Club for details.